Hi, my name is Pastor Kate, and Merry Christmas from here in the Sanctuary of Grace Episcopal Church to you wherever you find yourself on this Christmas Eve. How do you know when it's Christmas? I mean, okay, obviously the decorations and the dulcet tones of Mariah Carey might give you some context clues, but in your heart of hearts, how do you know when it's Christmas? For me, every year around this time, I know it's Christmas because I have a 3-day-long Italian Christmas cookie baking extravaganza. I lovingly, painstakingly try to recreate Mrs. Anelli's Angeletti cookies, these perfect, doughy, ricotta, lemony sort of clouds that then get iced and covered in sprinkles, and then you put them in a tower and you add in these pastel pink Jordan almonds, and they're just mwah, oh, so good. I also try to bring back to life my memories of the Regina Biscotti, these crunchy sesame seed just delights that we would stand in line for at Natal's Bakery for 2 hours every single December the 23rd. And Natal's Bakery, Natal's even means Christmas in Italian. It's just sort of this hallmark moment. And in the words of my grandfather, it's just not Christmas without the cookies. Every year, it's this major undertaking. But still, every single year, I would put on the Christmas music and dedicate days on days on days to baking because the smells and the tastes, just pure perfection. They reminded me of the Christmases of my childhood and of family members who are no longer with us. Every year, that's how I knew it was Christmas. Every year, that is, until this one. Since developing COVID last Christmas and the heart and lung damage that I'm still in the process of healing, every single ounce of energy is so precious, so hard-won that I simply didn't have it in me to bake the Christmas cookies this year. And maybe it sounds small, and I'm sure that it is in the grand scheme of everything that's going on in the world, but this felt really hard to me. I was grieving the cookies, I was feeling guilty for not making them, and in a year where so much has not felt normal, I think we all know what it is to grieve our old normal these days. I was just so craving that little bit of familiar comfort to soothe my emotionally and physically broken heart. I was telling a friend about this, and she was just such a wonderful listener. She hummed in all the right places. And then at the end, she took a moment and she said, "Kate, you know that they have cookies at the grocery store, right?" And I, of course, have a lot of big feelings because I always have a lot of big feelings, but they're not the right cookies. And just so graciously, she said, I know they're not the right cookies. But I think what you loved about the cookies was not that they were perfect, but that they reminded you that you were loved. So what would a loving way be to hold on to this tradition so that it doesn't need to feel stressful or exhausting or make you feel guilty? But how can you transform it so that it will remind you that you are loved this Christmas? So how do we know? How do we know when it's Christmas? If Jesus' resurrection at Easter preaches to us the truth that love is stronger than death, Jesus' birth at Christmas reminds us that love that love that the Bible tells us is God, is with us, is with us. That Emmanuel that every Sunday in Advent we have been singing, O come, Emmanuel. Emmanuel literally means God with us. Wherever we are, right now, this Christmas, God is with us, just as we are, just as the world is, however far from perfect they may be. In our Christmas story, God is not born under what we might call ideal circumstances. God is not born in golden palaces or decked out temples. God is born in a manger, a place that houses livestock. And if you have ever mucked out a stable, you know that it is hard to get messier and less glamorous than that. God is born under the very real risk of violence from the Roman Empire. And God being born into the world, not only is God not showing up with a golden chariot and an army to fight back Rome, God is being born as a teeny tiny baby who won't even be able to hold his own head up for another 6 months. This is not ideal. This was not the plan for those who are waiting for the deliverance of God. For the people who are waiting for deliverance, it is hard to think of less perfect circumstances under which God is going to be born. And yet, Jesus being born, God being born in less than ideal circumstances, means that God can be born in our less than ideal circumstances. Because it is the messy places, the hurting places that need God the most. It is those places of deep heartbrokenness that cry out for Emmanuel. For God to show up in our worlds and love us as we are. And in that moment, to help us imagine how that love could transform our hearts and how those transformed hearts could transform this world. So this year, I did not make the perfect Italian Christmas cookies of my memory. I bought break and bake cookie dough from the grocery store and I slapped on some rainbow sprinkles. And they were not fancy and they were not perfect, but they were delicious. They were delicious. And every single night in Advent, I would make 2 cookies. One for my spouse and one for me. Our chocolate lab would get dog cookies, of course. And for 30 minutes after dinner, as we ate our cookies, we would sit and talk and be together in the busyness of the season. For me, making those cookies, even though they weren't the perfect cookies of memory, was my way of saying, I love you, to my spouse and to myself. Those cookies remind me that love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. Making them reminds me that God is with me now, even with a heart that doesn't work quite as well as it used to, but can still love. My sense is that many of us are tired this Christmas. We are in the 3rd season of a pandemic, in a world that seems more broken and divided than ever. 80,000 Granite Staters are without power today after yesterday's crazy storm. Christmas services and gatherings have been canceled across the country. We had water coming through the stained glass window in here yesterday. It's been a lot. And I think it can feel hard to love. It can feel hard to love in a world where so much that we took for granted perhaps no longer seems guaranteed. But it is into a world like ours, that love takes the risk of birth, messy, imperfect, whether that was 2,000 years ago in Bethlehem or today, wherever you find yourself. Maybe it won't look exactly the way you expected it to, but it will be exactly what we need. So how will we know? How will we know that it's Christmas? Whatever you find your heart needing this year, whether it's love or cookies, or maybe a little bit of both, we know that it's Christmas when love shows up. So may God be born. May God be born into your life and into our world in new and wonderful ways this Christmas. May God bless you.